Okay. All right, welcome everyone to the second Artist Talks of today. I would like to introduce our second speaker, Dianne Sonnenberg. And Dianne is going to share the story of reconnecting with her First Nations community and culture and the effect that it has had on her artwork. You know what? I'm so sorry. I am going to... sorry, folks. Just give me 1 second. I should have... why is my... Oh, this is bad. Okay, sorry. I had a lovely edited version, which I had created, and now I seem to have lost. So I have the unedited version, so stick with me here, folks. So Dianne was adopted into a Michigan family as an infant, and she found her birth family in 2013. And this major moment changed the trajectory of her mosaic work and helped her find her artistic voice. She is a proud Anishinaabe Indigenous artist, so she was born here in Toronto, as we heard earlier during the land acknowledgement. And she's currently based in Austin, Texas. And she's a proud member of the Chippewas Rama First Nation. And her sculptural work and mosaic and sculptural work has attracted international attention through numerous awards, exhibits, and symposia. And Dianne's presentation today is called Finding My Artistic Voice. And you're going to have to help me because oh, here we go. Connecting with family, community, and culture. And Dianne, among her many accomplishments, was awarded in 2010 the Best Architectural Mosaic in Chicago, Illinois. She's a sought-after instructor across North America, and she coordinates community projects through her sponsorship with the Austin Creative Alliance. So we're really pleased to have you here today. Thank you so much for making time to join us. So help me in welcoming Dianne.
Thank you, Pippa, and thanks to the Ontario Mosaic Group. I'm so happy to be here. I'm happy I was able to make this trip up to Toronto. It's a whirlwind visit. I'm here for just about a day. But I'm delighted that this worked out to attend and to give this presentation today. So as Pippa said, the title of my presentation is Finding My Artistic Voice, Connecting with Family, Community, and Culture. So greetings everyone, bonjour mes amis, and ani bonjour kinuia. So I'm going to start by talking about some of my early works that led to my development as a mosaic artist. So one of the very first things that I created to attract a bit of attention was this large gold guitar featured here with my beautiful sponsors, the Dixie Chicks, now known as the Chicks. And that was, you've seen these kinds of things in communities. This one was sponsored by Gibson Guitar. They brought in a whole bunch of large fiberglass guitars to Austin. They're 10 feet tall. And you know, artists would submit a design idea. You'd make the guitar there featured around town for a while and then auctioned for charity. So this guitar raised $55,000 for charity. And this was like very early on in my career. I had been making mosaics for just a couple years. And it set a trajectory as a large-scale artist. So I acted on that, and that's one of the things I became known for early on. On the upper side of the screen is a backsplash I created also early on for another artist. We traded art, and that was featured in an early Society of American Mosaic Artists exhibit, Mosaic Arts International, in 2006. And then this was my first of many mandalas, which I created when I learned about sacred geometry and mandala art. I took a class from a local artist who was teaching about that. So super major shift number one was this project, which you'll see on my website. And, if you've followed my work for any length of time, you've seen these eggs. So the client saw the guitar, loved it, and thought I was the artist to create this wild vision they had for 2 giant 6-foot-tall rotating eggs on their property. I said, yeah, sure, I can do that. And just because I appreciate the synchronicity of this, they paid me $55,000, which was the amount that I had earned for charity the year before. So I felt like it was great. Karma, good karma. And I want to talk now about how themes developed in my work, because I think that's important for all of us as artists to actually pay attention and notice, what are we creating art about? So because of the attention these large pieces got, I did receive several commissions for other large-scale art. And one of them was this horse mural, which is 4 feet by 6 feet, and was created for an Arabian horse ranch on their barn. So I've had the opportunity to do some really cool projects. The ceiling mosaic, which has some glow-in-the-dark features at night, represents a spiral galaxy with glow-in-the-dark glass, and is in a beautiful house in the Ozark Mountains in Missouri. And then this was another of the large-scale public charity pieces. You've seen the cow parade in many cities all across the world, and this was done for the one in Austin, Texas. And I called her Gilded Lily. After a bout with breast cancer in 2010, I began creating art bras. So, I'm focusing on art that has meaning to me in my personal work. So I've created 10 of them so far, and once I get through my treatment this next year, I'll probably create some more. But I've got a good prognosis, and I'm going to be healing up in a little while. But there's so much fun to make, and it's really cool to see people wearing mosaics. And what I do with them, you can see there's some little trim on the edges, and so I make sure that it's safe for people to wear. And these are worn by breast cancer survivors in a runway show. They're auctioned for charity. I've raised tens of thousands of dollars for them, and that makes me very happy. And another big moment was this longhorn, who was designed to represent the Waterford Crystal Trophy that the Texas Longhorn football team won when they won the Rose Bowl. So you can see he's got a rose in his mouth, and I represented the Waterford Crystal with beveled mirror. And Valerie was talking about andamento in her presentation, the direction and flow of the mosaic, creating something with square tiles on a decidedly not square surface. It was extraordinarily difficult, as you can see from some of the connections there. And I had 3.5 weeks to make it because of a problem with the fiberglass structures. That they arrived 3.5 weeks before the auction. Yeah, and it sold for $250,000 at charity. I think people like shiny things. Yeah, that's maybe why we do it in some part, but yeah, it was thrilling. And there's Matthew McConaughey, and there were a lot, it was a very high profile thing. So having these happen, they're not like what I would be creating on my own with my personal work, but they've had a huge influence on the development of myself as an artist. So I began to look at themes in my work as I grew. Definitely mandala art, sacred geometry, and in practice, sacred geometry has a lot of meaning in it. The way, the proportions, and way you design the work, and that becomes a very important part of the work. So the mandalas are created with attention to proportion and scale and so forth. You'll see spirals showing up in the work as well, and that has sacred meaning. It does. And the basis of sacred geometry is nature. Yeah, that's where it comes from, and it's fascinating. I teach a whole class in this, and it's just utterly fascinating to me and to most other people who take the class, because a lot of us don't know about that. So also spirals and waves, the lines that create an aesthetic look for the work. And this was a really fun piece. Serena, my daughter, has sat on this sofa, and it's just a lovely creation built in a cob house in Georgetown, Texas, a city outside of Austin, and we did it on site over the course of a couple weeks. The client was one of my students, and she worked with me. And then her husband was responsible for dremeling all the edges of the tesserae so nobody would be harmed when they sat on it. And then this fountain was done on site at the house in Missouri where the ceiling is. So I found that I really liked working with smalty as well as stone, semi-precious gems, and materials like that. And I felt like that, for me, really grounded myself in nature. The gemstones, the different colors of stones and textures. As you can see with this work, I'm using several different kinds of stones and gems. It really gives you that feeling of connection with nature. And so it seemed all disconnected, but when I look at it, when I analyze it, it's like, no, this is not disconnected at all. I'm really, truly focusing on nature in many different ways to influence my work. So then this happened, major shift number 2. In 2013, I, thanks to the internet, found my birth family. I was adopted, left Ontario when I was a baby. And first of all, I found my mother's family. My mother came from the Netherlands with her family in the mid-50s after World War II, and they settled here in Ontario like many people from the Netherlands did. There's a strong community of Dutch immigrants here in Ontario. And what happened was she met a Native American man, my dad, Gary, and they had a 3-year relationship, but decided not to get married when she became pregnant. So they made the decision to give me up for adoption. these are always very complicated things. And so when I found them again, it was just a very, very major turning point for me to reconnect with actual kin. When Serena was born, that was the very first person I ever knew who was actually related to me. So it was a big freaking deal. And, we live in a world, a Eurocentric world. So, I knew about my Dutch culture, but I didn't really have much of a grasp of my native culture. So it was something that allowed me to begin that connection, because there are actual tangible people. You see here my brother Dean, who would have been here if it was a shorter drive. He lives up in Muskoka. But, to be able to reconnect with them, to see the similarities in ourselves, and to be able to develop those relationships, it's been very special. And in the realm of truth and reconciliation, which many of you know about through the apologies that have been given to Indigenous people here in Canada to go for, and the Truth and Reconciliation document by Murray Sinclair, there is a movement to look at how we can move forward in our lives, in our government, in our community, to reconcile and grow together going forward, rather than one or the other. It's not a one or the other kind of thing. Honestly, it's how do we reconcile, and telling the truth is a big part of how that begins, communicating. So I recognized that connection with my own story, and that really started to help me see new visions in my artwork. So I am from Chippewas of Rama First Nation, and this was one of the very first things I was able to do for my community. It was on Indigenous Peoples Day many years ago. We set up a table at the tribal festival, and people came around and made the little squares that created the borders, and then Serena and I actually worked on the rest of it to finish it up. And it's on display now in the elder care facility at Rama. And just for the record, Chippewa is what most people call us. Ojibwa is essentially the same word. Chippewa is the westernization of the word Ojibwa. So if you put an O in front of Chippewa, you get Ojibwa. So it's just a different way of saying it. And then Anishinaabe is what we call ourselves. And that's Ojibwe, Ottawa, and Potawatomi, Tri-Council. So my newer work began to be about recognizing and acknowledging my identity, exploring my story, and then how it relates to larger stories as well. So I'm using the motifs in traditional native beadwork and my own style, which has to do with mandalas and waves and spirals and stone and such. And the smaller piece over here is sort of about my adoption story, how I'm represented as the globe in the center, my family surrounding me but not quite touching, but an integral part of it. So it's sort of a sad but uplifting piece, I hope. So again, recurring themes. I, rather than try to figure out changes, I embraced what was already there and expanded on it, looking for patterns. Like Valerie talked about in her presentation, taking the time to find the meaning and developing the concepts of the work was very important. So this piece on that side of the screen is called Transcendence. You'll see on the bottom that there's a lot of earthy dark colors rising up through the reds and the yellows to the rarefied whites and golds at the top to emerge out of. And that piece was created during the pandemic, and that was my way of getting up out of the sheer despair that I felt over what was happening. And then the piece down in the center, which you've seen also little bits and pieces of the details of that piece on the title slides. That piece is, Serena, do you remember what that piece is called? I'm drawing just a little bit of a blank, but I'll figure it out. At any rate, the concept of this piece is when the shell, the image you project to the world is broken open or shattered. What emerges from the inside is beautiful. The inside of your being is precious and lovely. So if you allow yourself to experience authentically what's there after your soul is shattered, it's lovely. Thank you. Yeah, being up here is not easy. Thank you. Oh, I appreciate that so much. I depend on the community brain. Exposed. And then the mandala is entitled Origin, and it's about creation. And I also like exploring different mediums, so here are some examples of that. The leaf on the far side is done in fused glass, and I used a photograph that Serena took to create this. And the centerpiece is a limestone sculpture, which was my very first sculpture, and I won first place in a major show, so that was cool. I haven't made any sculptures since, because stone sculpting is even harder and more time intensive than mosaic. So, I decided to just keep specializing in mosaic, although I do other sculptural things. And then some watercolor, and the piece below is fused glass and watercolor. And you can still see the themes emerging, even though it's a different medium, you see that I still do what I do. It's just, I think each of us, as we're developing our own voices as an artist, want to pay attention to what we enjoy, what tends to come out when we create our work, and embrace it. That's who you are as an artist. So this was a lovely opportunity. Last year I had to go to Baja, Mexico, in Rosarito, with Maestro Giulio Minosi, and we spent 2 weeks creating works. There were 12 artists, and the theme was the creation stories of the Yumano, the Kumeyaay people in Baja California. And what I found was the creation stories of my own ancestors were very similar to theirs, even though they lived a few thousand miles apart. So I developed this piece based on that. And here's a little bit of the background there, so you can see my drawing, my image, and how it ended up turning out. You've only got 2 weeks, so it's It's like, what's that TV show, like Project Runway? And then they throw in a twist. But it was a wonderful experience, 12 artists from all over the world, and you have the opportunity to really develop your skill set and grow as an artist through an experience like this. So it was extraordinary to be able to participate and to get to know some of my cousins in Mexico. So we're now at the present. I still do commissions, although I'm getting very tired of it because it's a lot of work. This was a piece, 72 square feet for a hospital in Houston with an underwater theme. And this also got me through the pandemic. This was created in 2021. And I used a variety of materials, mostly Mexican small tea. And then the water was created from Montreal Tile Lab. The Ricardo Ruiz. And he hand designed the glazed tile that I used for this piece. Absolutely spectacular. And then you can see a lot of the fish are fused glass. And I collaborated with some fused glass artists because commissions, they don't always give you the time to do it properly yourself, so you have to hire other people to help, which is what I did there. And here's some details from that piece. And Nokomis is the piece here in the show, and I'm going to spend just a little bit of time talking about that. I used responsibly harvested deer skin in the piece because that's part of my cultural heritage and what my ancestors used in their work. Also glass beads, and then materials that I'm used to working with, small tea and stone, and crystals, and embedded in the center of this piece under the aragonite stone in the center are the 4 sacred medicines of my culture: tobacco, sweetgrass, cedar and sage. Thank you, Serena. And what it is a contemporary medicine shield, which I'll talk about in just a little bit. I created this piece for an exhibit in Seattle, Washington. It was a indigenous glass art show. And I was just utterly astonished that there were other indigenous glass artists because I didn't know of anybody. That was before I knew about Michel Dumont. And so it's like, I've got to be a part of this. And so I was very excited to be a part of it. If you know anything about contemporary indigenous art, Preston Singletary and Dan Friday are very, very famous. So it was a real honor for me to be a part of this exhibit. And you can see some of this up there, and me with the work. So this is an example of a traditional medicine shield. They're symbolic and sacred. They're designed to protect the person for whom they were created. So typically they'd be a very personal piece. But what I wanted to do was to create a medicine shield that offered protection to the viewer. So the idea I had was to create a piece with Mother Earth as our protector. And so that's why I chose the crystals in the center, the vines growing out from the center, Mother Earth emerging. Some people think of those as snakes, and that's okay with me. And then, the various kinds of stone. The granite used around the crystals in the center that has such a gravitas, and we know that Canadian shield granite is some of the oldest stone on the planet. So it has a story, and you can feel that when you work with it. It's extraordinary. So I also included this just to show you that my design process is not all very pretty. So this is my little scribble of what I started out with. And you don't have to be somebody who can do one of those really fancy watercolor sketchbook kind of deals. I'm very impressed by those, but that's not me. It's just, my ideas down on paper, and then I evolve it and create it. So I wanted to show you just a little bit of the process. For the vines, I used Peltaya, which is a very strong cement-based material. You form aluminum foil into the shapes you want, and then cover it with the Peltaya medium to create a very strong yet very lightweight sculptural thing. And then, like Valerie, I used several layers of fiberglass mesh and thin set mortar to create the substrate. And you can see on the right here, I used 2 layers of that. The first layer had the deer skin. The second layer was the one that I intended to create the mosaic with. So it's a process of building. And I did use wire inside each of the vines to help strengthen them so they wouldn't fall apart. And then the process of creating the mosaic. You can see over there how I started laying in the crystals and then just kept adding them until they were focused in. Here I'm using design software to test out some different kinds of layouts and designs. I really wanted to use this tesseract. It's a kind of Mexican smalty. I think it's called Arizona Sun, and it's a really, really beautiful, earthy, multicolored smalty, but I just couldn't get it to look right. It just wasn't working. It wasn't speaking to me. So what ended up really working well was a ring of water, symbolizing water. So I used the blues and greens, and then that was my aha moment for figuring out that portion of the project to where it felt right. And sometimes you can't rush these things. You just have to let it emerge. When I began designing the piece, I didn't know that that was how it was going to turn out, but that was what it needed to be. And the trick is just keeping with it and trusting your instincts, because I find that my instincts usually eventually lead me down the right path. And then here it is in process over there, and the finished piece here. And this shale, which I got from Rachel Sager, for those of you who know who she is. Initially I meant them to represent the rays of sun coming out, but I also think that they represent Turtle Island, the paws of a turtle.
When I saw it, I thought, I didn't think snakes, I thought turtles, and those are the turtle claws.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I actually like that better, so that's what I go with now as well, because it really, again, speaks to me. Even though I didn't originally plan for it, that's what emerged. So that's probably the biggest takeaway I have for you. Listen to your intuition, listen to your voice, listen to what you as an individual artist are creating, and trust that and embrace it. So I'm showing you now a few recent pieces. Some of you worked with me on this piece in Buffalo, New York at the Society of American Mosaic Artists Conference. It was a piece created for the neighborhood who suffered the horrible supermarket mass murder. And so we created this for a organization that does a lot of community work in the neighborhood. And you can see the thematic elements emerging in that. Oh, how do I get back? Sorry. Earth's Tapestry I created recently for a show in Austin, Texas. Again, similar elements. I used primarily stone, although there is a little bit of glass in this piece. Community Seed Pods is my first official permanent public art project and probably my last. Public art is extraordinarily challenging and takes a long time. There's a lot of bureaucracy, but it was a huge accomplishment, and I'm very, very proud of it. They're between, with the poles, they're between 10 and 12 feet tall, done in Mexican multi-infused glass. I created a community project out of the fused glass seeds that you see on the milkweed to the far end and the okra in the center. And those were created by the neighbors and other mosaic artists and anybody who wanted to come out and be a part of it. And we planted xeriscape plants around in Austin, Texas. We don't get a lot of rain, and so we needed to plant things around them that didn't necessarily need to be watered to survive. So it'll continue to grow, and it'll look like the pods are growing out of the garden. And the idea of this one is the pods representing the diversity of the area, the children of the area who are nurtured in the seed pods and then go out into the world to live their own lives. And so, again, it was symbolic and nature was the basis of the design. And here's an idea of how tall they are. I'm not very tall, but they're about double. And this I have just almost barely finished. It still needs to be grouted. I finished it the day before I got on the plane to come here. And this is a remembrance artwork for sexual assault survivors. It was created in response to a lawsuit by a group of sexual assault survivors who are not being respected and treated seriously by the system. You know, we've all heard of this. It happens all over the world. And these women, when they won their lawsuit against the city, asked for art to be installed in the courthouse where the sexual assault cases are heard. So this will greet everyone who enters that building on December 3rd going forward. And I created her face like what Carol Shulkin or Donna Van Hoosier, other mosaic artists, would do, using different colors of tesserae instead of just flesh tones. And that helped me represent her as every woman. She's not just this or that or her. So that was important to me. And then her cloak has 14 panels representing each of the plaintiffs, and they represent different textiles from all over the world. And you may recognize some of them. So, and then it was done as a community project, so the little circle mosaics around the edge were created by the survivors, people who work in community organizations, some of the attorneys who represented these women, and everybody came together to create those as a community project to have their hands in it. You know, many hands creates more than the sum of its parts. So I'm very excited about that and wanted to share it with you. Also the allies friends, family are rendered in fused glass, standing on the earth below her, and her ancestors are standing behind her in the sky. Yeah, when it's grouted, the grout is added in between the tesserae, then they will stand out just a little bit more. Right now they're sort of invisible. But that's sort of what I wanted. I wanted them to be somewhat ethereal. So like Valerie was talking about choosing your materials carefully to represent what you want to say. And that's what I did in that case as well. Merci beaucoup. Thank you. To the judge. Thank you. If you have questions, Pippa.
I have a question. So you mentioned, could you just go back to your most recent one? You said that hasn't been grouted yet.
Mm-hmm.
And did you use Mexican smalty for this one?
It's almost all stained glass.
Oh, stained glass.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I was going to say, wow, that's a really unique thing to try and grout smalty. Do you ever do that, or is that? It seems like a difficult thing to do because it is so textural.
Yeah, it is. Mexican smalty is smoother than Italian smalty, so I can and do grout it. The seed pods were all Mexican smalty, and I grouted them. Yeah, it has a smoother finish, which allows for grouting, whereas it's extraordinarily difficult to grout Italian smalty. The horse mural was Italian smalty and not grouted. Just I used a really thick, heavy bed of thin set underneath and hoped for the best.
Yeah.
It was going to be outside. But stained glass allowed for a lot of nuance of color because you can get a sheet of stained glass that's got a lot of colors mixed in and gradients, and that allowed me to get the correct values for the different shadows and light on her face.
When I saw the red, I thought of here we have the red dress. So I was wondering if you had any connection with that in this, or it's just a coincidence.
It's not a coincidence. Okay. No, she's wearing the red dress in honor of missing and murdered Indigenous women.
Yeah.
Yes. And that was my panel.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have a question because I'm about to be embarking on my first community mosaic project with another member of OMA, Catherine Spooner-Bossy.
Mm-hmm.
And we are trying to figure out how to incorporate all of these excited people who want to participate. We could have upwards of 200 people.
Oh, wow.
So I noticed in this one and the other one, you had incorporated their work as a frame. So I'm guessing they weren't involved in the sort of central part, and you had kind of allowed individual contributions in small discrete pieces that would then, is that like a strategy you often use, or do you have any advice for this kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because most often many, if not most of those 200 people have never made a mosaic before. So to task them with creating something important is very difficult for them, frustrating for them, and it doesn't give you the result you want. So having, and these two pieces as part of the borders, you'll notice all of those circles have a little bit of orange in them. So I used that as a unifier. So whatever they did was okay. And, there's a wide range of skill levels and interest levels depending on who was making it and whether they wanted to be there or not. And so I was able to use what everybody made. So they're all, honored to be a part of it and able to be a part of it no matter what their skill level is. But that's a really important part of the process. The fused glass seeds on the seed pods, anybody can put glass on glass and put it into a kiln. And I controlled the pellets so that they only had certain colors to choose from, and then that allowed them all to be cohesive no matter what they did, whether, you know. Yeah, so that's how it works.
And did you provide templates for people who just were drawing a blank on what they were going to do? Because I really find some people, they just set to work and they know exactly, and other people sit there for an hour because they just can't figure out what to do.
Yeah, and that's another really important thing that helps a lot. So I did have little templates created. I had a bunch of mosaic artists come to the event as helpers so that they could help guide and show people the tesserae and how the glue works and all of that, because there was 80 people. It was, you know, it's hard when there's a huge crowd. So having as many helpers as you can also helps out. And then we also printed out some little designs, like some flowers and hearts and things that we thought people might enjoy, or at least create starting points from. You know, the flower might remind them of something else they know about. So that's for the people who face a blank piece of paper and panic. And a lot of people did use those as their inspiration.
Any more questions? The Missouri roof, did you do that on site, or did you have it and were able to install it later?
That was, yeah, that's a very good question. I created it on fiberglass mesh, so I glued directly to the mesh with plastic underneath, so it could be lifted up in pieces and then installed on site. And I did go to the installation and was up on scaffolding, which I do not like. And, you know, just the installation part. My job was to glue on all the little pieces that fell off when it was being installed, because that just happens because of gravity. And I was so sore and tired after just a couple hours of that. You know, there's no way you can do it on site, in my opinion, without suffering greatly.
Scaffolding, you have to stand, or is there a way to lie down and do it?
Well, I don't know. Did Michelangelo lie down? He might have. He might have.
He did in some parts.
Yeah.
It never works, right?
Right, yeah. Well, I had to stand and reach above my head with my arms, which was not pleasant. 5 minutes of that, and you want to be done.
They were laying down before how they did thousands of years ago, they made?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm always wondering about
Yeah. It would be interesting to know how they.
have their arms up.
I guess they just
And they don't
get really
have very
strong.
fancy glues, pincettes. They were using very earthy things. All they
Right, yeah. So if there's an easy way to do it, that's my preferred method. And I don't think I'm going to do another ceiling.
been there, done that.
Right, yes.
Was it curved? Was it, or was it flat?
It was just angled.
Angle.
So there was a flat part in the center where the lights dropped down, and then it was like eight angled pieces. So it was all flat. That made it a lot easier.
Because then it gets mathematical.
Yes.
Well, on behalf of Ontario Mosaics artists, whatever we are, Ontario Mosaic artists, we just want to thank you so much for flying all the way here, even though you had a detour. We really appreciate that you would participate in our artist talks. So thank you very much
Thank
to
you,
Valerie
Amanda.
and to Dianne Sonnenberg.